Today I'm going to show you how to make some clear resin bezels using UV resin and real dried flowers. Here I'm using some UV resin tape, and I've just put cardboard on each of the edges. It's a nice trick so your hands won't be sticking to the tape, and it's easier to move around. I'm going to put some popsicle sticks underneath it because on top of my bezels the ring is not flush flat with the back of it. So you put the ring right on top of the tape in the popsicle sticks so that it will lay flat. And you're just going to put all your bezels right on top just like that. It'll keep the UV resin from leaking out the back. Push very firmly all around your bezel to make sure it's attached good to your tape. These are some gold crescent moons. And for this video, I'm just going to make the 2 pairs of earrings. And just make sure you press them down firmly. Make sure they're lined up right on top of the popsicle stick. Here's the dried flowers I'm going to be using. And then this is the UV resin I used. I always get a really big jug of this from Amazon, and it works great. Pour UV resin in about 1/2 to 3/4 full in each bezel. Be very careful how much you're putting in. You don't want to overflow it because it really makes a mess and it's hard to get it off everything. You'll see there's bubbles in there, so you have to take a toothpick and bring all the bubbles to the surface, and then you use a lighter to pop those bubbles. I run it around the edges. I pull them up from all the bottoms. The lighter doesn't reach the bubbles if they're on the bottom of the bezel, so you have to bring them up. And sometimes it can take a couple tries to get all the bubbles. It actually makes the earring look not as professional if there's bubbles in it, so I try my best to get all the bubbles out. When you're using the lighter, just do a quick pass over the earrings. You don't want to keep the lighter in any place for too long a time. There's a bubble on the bottom of that I have to get out still. And then that got the bubble out. Once you get the bubbles, you can go ahead and start adding your flowers. For my silver ovals, I decided to just put the whole flower into the resin. Once it's in there, you want to sort of push it down very gently with the toothpick. Try not to break your flower. They're very fragile. You just want it to sink down in the resin, and it will try to float back up, but just keep pressing it back down. And once you have it starting to lay flat, you're going to want to put some more UV resin on top of it. And this is where you really want to be careful not to overflow it. Just put just enough to make it look like it's having a small dome on top, but don't overflow it. And I've tried to do this several different ways. I only use the UV lamp one time, and I found that works best, and it makes the earrings look the best. So I just layer it all first, and then I use the UV lamp. For the moon earrings, I'm actually tearing the petals off of the flower and using them all separately and sprinkling them in, the crescent moons. I'm using the yellow one, and I'm also going to go ahead and use this light blue one as well. Those colors look really pretty together, especially in the gold earring. And I love this particular flower because you can do both with it. You can use the little tiny petals or you can use the full flower. And I find these dried flowers on Amazon. You can also dry your own flowers, which I do, but these I've actually bought off of Amazon. And I think these are some of my favorite flowers to use. You'll see that my resin looks a little bit more tacky in this one, and that's because I'm doing it in front of a open a window where the blinds are up, so the light is shining on it, and since it is UV resin, the sunlight will start drying that. The only reason I'm doing that is to have better light for the video. Usually I wouldn't do it in full light. So if you're doing this, it's best to use it like with a lamp light, or your project will start drying on you before you want it to. Then you just add your top layer of resin there. Make sure there's no bubbles in it. And then get your flowers moved just how you want it. I noticed here it needs a little bit more yellow on this earring because I want them to match a little bit since it's going to be a pair of earrings. So I'm going to add some more of the yellow petals over there. I sell these earrings in my craft booth at a craft mall. I also sell them at lots of different craft shows. And the bezels like this with the dried flowers are some of my best sellers. This, along with my 3-pack studs that I make out of the resin molds, that and these are my best sellers. Now that I have them just how I want them, I'm going to go ahead and put it under the UV lamp. This takes around 4 minutes, sometimes longer. Once you've finished the 4 to 5 minutes, just tap on it and see if it's tacky still. And if it's not, then they're done. Then once you're done with the UV lamp, you're just going to pull up the tape and take them each off and lay them face down. The tape will actually make a sticky substance on the back of there. We're going to clean that off. But first take them all off and lay them face down. Sometimes with the UV tape, you'll even get a little bit of the tape stuck to the back. So it's sticky and it has a weird substance filling on the back. So you have to clean that with alcohol. And I use a Q-tip. You can use whatever you want, but I've found that a Q-tip works best for me. I just use regular rubbing alcohol. And I put it on the Q-tip. And in the background, you see I had some foil. I decided not to use it. I was going to add it with the flowers that I broke apart, but I decided not to use it for this project. But sometimes I'll add it in there, and it really does make them really pretty. So just rub it real good, make sure all of that's off. And once I clean the back, I do just go ahead and run the alcohol over the front too. Make sure there's no fingerprints or anything on there. And you'll just do that to each of the earrings. I love each earring. I love the full flower and I love the tiny little petals in them. I think they're pretty. Now on our crescent moons, I noticed that we did have a small leak at the top of it. So what I had to do was take some pliers. Any type of pliers will work. You just have to be very careful when you're doing it and grab very firmly onto the resin that has leaked out, and you're going to work it and pry it off. Now sometimes it will ruin your project, so you have to be very careful. Thankfully, both of these moons turned out fine, and the resin that I pulled off of them didn't damage the bezel at all. Never use sand on a metal bezel. It'll scratch it and make it look bad. This right here is where I'm showing you. I'm taking some of the pliers, and see how it just popped right off of it? You have to do it very carefully and grab right on it. Now, these are actually crimping pliers. That's all I had at the time. And I'm very carefully just prying that extra resin off, being careful not to scratch the actual metal of the bezel. And I got it to where it looks fine. You can't even tell it happened. Sometimes I don't get that lucky, and it does ruin the project. In which case, if it's just a small thing, I usually just end up keeping those for myself. And I was able to get both of them all the way off. When you're done, you want to go ahead and clean that with alcohol the rest of the way after you've pried the excess off. And it looks good now. Yeah, make sure none of it's in that jump ring hole at the top too. Resin can be very sharp, so you definitely want to make sure there's no leftover pieces up there because it can cut you or your customer. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to finish off your earring. You take your jump ring and open it. And I had to find my jewelry pliers. I had taken them to a craft show, so I found those. And then you're going to add your earring hook. Depending on your project, you'll have to move the bottom of your earring hooks. That way your earring lays flat when you are putting them in your ear. So it just depends on which way your jump ring is angling. And also be careful which earring hooks you use, because when you're twisting them like that, you'll end up breaking them. I've broken quite a few, so make sure you're getting quality ear hooks. And you want to make sure this lays flat. Just looks better that way. And hopefully your earring hook won't fall off as well if it's laying flat. And just repeat this process with your second earring. And do that very gently. Like I said, you could break that piece off. And just add it on and close it off. It's best to use 2 types of pliers for this because it makes it so much easier to close it off. You can just ruin all your fingernails trying to do it with your fingers only. Okay, now we'll move on to our gold crescent moons. We're going to do the same process. We're going to put our jump ring on and then our ear hook on. And close it off. These didn't actually need the bottoms of the ear hooks moved. And we'll do our last one. And then I'll show you how I go ahead and package it to sell. Okay, so I just get these packs. They're kind of like a pack of 100 to 500, and I get them on Amazon. That's where I also get my stud earring packs too. And I just use these clear plastic backs. These earrings are pretty easy to make once you get the technique down. And just use trial and error and use the tips that I gave you, and you'll do great. Look how pretty that is, nice and packaged, and they're ready to be hung up at my shop. Here's the last pair. Just get those backs on. If you like this video, please subscribe and like it. and go look at my other videos. I have tons of other tutorials of earrings that you can look at in different resin videos. Look how pretty they turned out. I love the blues. Thank you for watching.